The stars at the very rim of the galaxy looked cold and thin, as if light itself had grown weary from traveling so far. From the bridge of the star's grace, Captain Vexusa stood motionless, her 6 arms folded neatly behind her back. The viewing screen stretched before her like a window into eternity. Her purple skin glistened faintly in the starlight, the deep ridges across her face marking her as one of the elder Etherians, a being who had spent centuries walking among forgotten systems. For 300 years, she had catalogued dead worlds, mapped barren suns, and wandered through silence. Out here, at the very edge of everything, she expected only more emptiness. Behind her, the bridge crew moved with the quiet rhythm of routine. The hum of hegemony technology filled the air like a low, eternal breath. At the science station, Dr. Keithmore leaned over his console, his large black eyes drinking in streams of data. His gray-grayan skin gleamed, smooth as polished stone, the living mark of a people who valued knowledge above all else. At communications, Zarlin's blue tendrils flowed gracefully over the controls. The Aquari woman had joined this mission not to chart stars or seek resources, but to study the strangest thing of all, the way languages fractured and evolved in empty space. For her, silence was not absence but a puzzle to be solved. The star's grace moved deeper into the system, the yellow star ahead burning with a faint and weary glow. Out here, so far from the galactic core, the heavens themselves seemed thin. Stars were scattered like dust. And dust, as every scholar knew, was lifeless. Life belonged to the warmth of the center, where energy was rich, where planets bathed in golden light, where civilizations flourished under the steady guidance of elder species. Out here, there should have been nothing. And then, the computer sang. A soft chime. Barely noticeable. Yet it pulled the bridge into stillness. Quintar, the navigation officer, looked up. His insectoid features twitched in surprise, mandibles clicking as he spoke. Captain. Sensors detect something unusual. Orbiting the 3rd planet. Captain Vexusa shifted her gaze. Her primary eyes fixed on him, while her smaller pair remained locked on the star. Define unusual. Dr. Keithmore's hands danced across his console, his voice carrying an energy his people rarely betrayed. Artificial structures, Captain. Not natural debris. Signs of technology. The bridge grew silent. Zarlin froze mid-motion, her tendrils curling inward as her voice rang out, soft and musical. I detect signals. Electromagnetic transmissions. Communications. For the first time in decades, Captain Vexusa felt something she had forgotten. Surprise. She walked to the science station herself, her ridged features deepening as she looked over the readings. Numbers did not lie. They spoke with the clarity of stars. There was life here. Intelligent life. A civilization. Thriving alone at the galaxy's edge. Full scan, she ordered, her voice sharp with command. I want to know everything about that planet, and whoever dares to live there. The star's grace angled toward the 3rd planet, slipping deeper into orbit. What they saw defied every law of galactic history. The world below was blue and green, vibrant with oceans and continents teeming with complexity. Cities glowed across its surface like constellations reflected on stone. Machines moved. Electromagnetic chatter spilled into space. They had split the atom. They had reached beyond their atmosphere. They had built a civilization. And they had done it alone. Keithmore's voice shook with disbelief. Captain, these beings are completely disconnected from the galactic network. No guidance. No ancient mentors. They have developed independently. That was impossible. Every known civilization of the hegemony had been guided, touched, or shaped by older hands. None had walked the long road to the stars unaided. It was a principle as certain as gravity. And yet here was proof. Zarlin's tendrils wove urgently as she decoded the signals, her alien mind parsing languages at impossible speed. But what she found only deepened the mystery. "Captain, they are not one people. They speak in thousands of tongues. Entirely separate languages. Entirely separate cultures. Thousands." Vexusa's ridges darkened in alarm. A species divided into so many groups should have collapsed long before ever touching the stars. "How," she whispered, almost to herself, "do they share knowledge? How do they survive their own division?" The star's grace took up a hidden position behind a gas giant, the crew drinking in the data as if it were forbidden wine. The planet called itself Earth. Its inhabitants called themselves humans. They lived not as one civilization, but as hundreds, nations competing, fighting, erecting borders even as they reached into the heavens. Dr. Keithmore displayed their cities on the main screen. The crew stared in disbelief. The structures rose chaotically, with no pattern, no symmetry. Towers of glass stood beside low houses of stone. Roads twisted without order. Beings flowed in random currents, swarming like insects with no central mind. Quintar clicked in confusion. How do they coordinate anything? There is no central plan. No unity. Zarlan spoke softly, her voice trembling like waves on water. They create art. Stories with no function. They sing not for survival, but for joy. They keep animals as companions, even when those creatures serve no purpose. Captain Vexusa had seen countless worlds. She had mapped the ruins of forgotten empires, traced the bones of civilizations long turned to dust. But this chaos breathing as life, it was new. No species had ever advanced this way. And yet here they were. "Send word to Hegemony Central," she ordered at last. "We have found something that demands attention. And prepare a first contact package. I want to speak to these humans." Dr. Keithmore looked up, unease in his black eyes. "Captain, the protocols demand long observation before contact. We must be certain." "The protocols were written for ordinary discoveries," she replied. Her ridges glowed faintly with determination. "This is anything but ordinary." Zarlan composed a simple message, a string of mathematical truths that any advanced mind would recognize. It was cast into the void like a question into the dark. Hours later, the reply came. Not just mathematics. Not just logic. Images. Voices. Songs. Children laughing. Greetings in dozens of human tongues, layered with warmth and creativity. The bridge fell silent. The sounds of Earth filled the ship, chaotic, confusing, and beautiful. Captain Vexusa stood unmoving, her eyes on the blue world below. For the first time in her centuries of exploration, she understood. Everything the hegemony thought it knew about life, civilization, and intelligence, was about to be undone. Because here, at the forgotten edge of the galaxy, humanity had done the impossible. They had built their own path. They had defied every law of history. And in their chaos, in their contradictions, they had found a strength no ordered system could ever replicate. The revelation had only just begun. The message from Earth spread like fire through the hegemony. At first, it was disbelief. Then shock. Then a tidal wave of curiosity that could not be restrained. Within a cycle, orders were given. A research fleet assembled, not to conquer, not to claim, but to witness. To understand. To study what should not exist. 6 ships slipped silently into the Sol system, their drives whispering through the dark. Their crews represented half a dozen species, each carrying the weight of history, each bound by the protocols of exploration. They approached carefully, slowly, with reverence. They had not come to dominate. They had come to ask a question that unsettled the galaxy itself. How had humans done this alone? On the vigilant horizon, Scholar Taris of the Grayan people floated in the observation sphere. His gray skin gleamed faintly in the glow of Earth, his black eyes unblinking as he recorded every detail. The human cities burned like constellations scattered across the planet. But they were not orderly. They were sprawling, chaotic, fractal. Roads tangled without logic. Lights clustered and pulsed as if life itself had spilled randomly across the land. Taris whispered into his recorder, his voice heavy with awe. Unlike every civilization we know, they are fragmented. Countless nations, countless languages. They war with one another even as they reach into orbit. And yet, they endure. On another vessel, the Aquari linguist Zarlan unraveled the endless streams of sound flooding space. Music, speech, arguments, laughter, 1,000 different voices crashing together like waves. This should not work, she murmured to herself, her tendrils weaving around glowing data strands. Language divides. Confusion destroys. But for humans, difference is fuel. Conflict becomes creation. They thrive not despite their division, but because of it. The fleet documented everything. Human biology, fragile, soft, yet resilient in ways no one predicted. Their art, nonsensical to logic, yet stirring emotions even in alien hearts. Their history, a storm of conflict and cooperation, destruction and rebirth, collapsing empires followed by astonishing recoveries. To the hegemony, progress had always meant stability. Growth through unity. Advancement through guidance. But humanity told a different story. A story of survival through contradiction. The first direct transmissions were exchanged carefully. Simple greetings. Universal constants. Then longer conversations. The humans responded with warmth, suspicion, excitement, fear, all at once, as if a single species could feel every emotion simultaneously. To the research fleet, this was dizzying. Most species spoke with one voice when meeting the stars. Humans spoke with millions. Ambassador Lurith, an elder of the Apherian, attempted to parse it. He listened to human broadcasts, his 6 arms folded tight as his ridged face hardened. They are not one people, he said flatly. They cannot speak as one. How can such a species survive the galaxy's storms if they cannot even agree among themselves? Zarlan countered softly, her voice rippling like water. Perhaps unity is not the only path. Perhaps diversity itself is their strength. Lurith dismissed her words with a wave, but privately, doubt gnawed at him. The fleet decided to watch more closely. Probes were sent into orbit. Observers stationed themselves on the moon, hidden in shadow, recording everything. And what they saw defied every law of galactic progress. Humans had built machines to destroy one another, weapons capable of reducing their world to ash. And yet, somehow, they restrained themselves. Somehow, they pulled back from total annihilation. They fought wars that scarred continents. Yet, within decades, they rebuilt cities larger than before. They poisoned their air and water, but then learned to heal the damage with invention. Every fall was followed by a rise. Every collapse by rebirth. Taris recorded in near disbelief. They are a paradox. They create chaos, then draw strength from the very chaos that should consume them. It is as though destruction itself is part of their design. The humans themselves did not know they were being studied so closely. To them, the sky remained empty. They reached upward with rockets, machines of crude fire compared to hegemony drives, yet astonishing in their own right. When the first human machines brushed against the outer planets, the fleet held its breath. They are coming, Quintar, the insectoid observer, clicked nervously. Slowly, blindly, but they are coming. They will not stop. And in that realization, fear stirred. The hegemony had existed for ages. Civilizations rose carefully under its watch, mentored by elder species, folded gently into the collective. None were allowed to develop alone, because alone meant unpredictable. Alone meant dangerous. But humanity had broken that law of history. They had risen in isolation. They had discovered fire, forged steel, split the atom, and reached for the stars, all without guidance. What else could they do? What else might they become? Ambassador Lurith voiced what many feared but would not say. If they survived without us, what need would they have for us at all? Meanwhile, Zarlan listened deeper to human voices, and what she found unsettled her even more than their wars. She found their stories. Humans told tales of gods and monsters, of heroes and tragedies. They sang songs not to inform, but to stir the heart. They wrote poems that spoke of longing, of loss, of the fleeting nature of existence. Zarlan had studied thousands of languages across dozens of worlds. But never had she encountered a species that wrapped meaning in so much beauty, or pain. "Captain," she whispered into her report, "I believe their stories are the key. They do not merely survive their chaos. They transform it into art. They give shape to suffering. They make hope out of despair." She paused, tendrils curling tightly. "And perhaps, that is why they endure." The reports were sent back to Hegemony Central. Scholars debated endlessly. Was humanity a miracle? A threat? A contradiction too dangerous to allow? Some called for containment. Others for careful observation. A few, very few, whispered the unthinkable. That perhaps the galaxy could learn from humanity. From his sphere aboard the vigilant horizon, Taris looked once more at the Earth. The blue planet glowed like a jewel against the Black Sea. He remembered his own people's history, how they had been guided, uplifted, protected. They had never known the abyss of isolation. They had never had to walk alone. And he wondered, for the first time in his long life, if they had truly lived. "Humans," he whispered. "What are you?" Thus the second chapter of Contact began. Not conquest. Not assimilation. But study, and unease. Because the galaxy had found something it had never seen before. A people who had walked the long road alone, and who, against every law of history, had not only survived, but thrived. And deep within the hearts of the hegemony's scholars and ambassadors, a question began to burn. If humanity could achieve this much without guidance, what might they become with the galaxy before them? The research fleets had come to study, not to fear. But fear crept in nonetheless. For months, the hegemony watched humanity with silent intensity. Every broadcast was intercepted. Every rocket launch catalogued. Every fragment of human history pored over by scholars who whispered to one another that the galaxy had never seen a species quite like this. The paradox only deepened. Humans had built machines of war capable of ending all life on their planet, yet somehow, against all probabilities, they still existed. They had torn their own world apart with conflict, yet rebuilt, each time stronger. They argued, divided, clashed endlessly, yet no storm seemed able to break them completely. It was as if chaos itself had become their teacher. But beneath that all was unease. Because if humanity could walk the long road alone, what else might they do? In the high halls of Hegemony Central, debate raged. Should humanity be welcomed into the galactic fold, guided at last, and made safe? Or should they be quarantined, contained before their chaos spilled outward? Ambassador Lurith stood at the center of those arguments, his ridged face hard with conviction. They are unpredictable. Dangerous. Every law of history tells us such a species cannot be allowed to roam free. If we let them walk among the stars unchecked, they will destabilize everything we have built. But Zarlan, the Aquari linguist, stood in quiet defiance. Perhaps what we have built needs to be unsettled. They are not a threat. They are a mirror. They show us that survival does not always come from order, but from resilience. From the ability to fall, and rise again. Her words were dismissed as naive. But in private, more and more scholars began to wonder. Because humanity was not just different. Humanity was impossible. And then, the Harari spoke. The Harari were not part of the hegemony. They had no fleets, no territories, no seats in the central halls. They wandered the outer dark, ancient and enigmatic, whispering truths in riddles. Most called them mad. Others called them prophets. When they came unbidden into the council chambers, the assembly fell silent. Their tall, gaunt forms glowed faintly as if made of starlight. Their voices were many-layered, echoing not in the ears but in the mind. "You have found the humans," they said. "The children who walked alone. The ones who should not be." The chamber rippled with unease. "What do you know of them?" Lurith demanded. The Harari's voices wove together into something like sorrow. "They are a spark. A seed. A reminder that the galaxy has forgotten." "Forgotten what?" The Harari turned their faceless heads toward the stars. "The architects." A silence deeper than vacuum fell. Long ago, before the hegemony, before most species even learned fire, the galaxy had belonged to another. The architects. Builders of wonders so vast their ruins still dotted forgotten systems. No one knew why they vanished. No one dared ask. The Harari spoke what none wished to hear. The architects are not gone. They sleep. They wait. And humanity is the key that will wake them. The council erupted in protest. "Madness," they said. "Superstition." The Harari were dreamers. And yet, none could entirely dismiss the chill that gripped their hearts. Because something about humanity did not fit. Not in history. Not in pattern. Not in reason. It was as though the galaxy had been holding its breath, waiting. Out at the edge of Sol, the research fleet listened to the Harari's warning with growing unease. Zarlan, her tendrils trembling, whispered what no one else dared say aloud. What if humanity is not an accident? What if they were left behind? Dr. Taris answered quietly, his black eyes unreadable. Then perhaps their chaos is not a flaw. It is design. Humanity, meanwhile, remained unaware of the storm gathering in the halls of alien empires. To them, the sky was still empty, waiting to be claimed. But the galaxy was no longer watching with curiosity. It was watching with fear. With reverence. With the uneasy recognition that the old order could not endure if humans were allowed to rise. Lurith pressed for containment, for control. "We must guide them before they awaken something none of us can withstand." But Zarlan countered, her voice firm now, unshaken. "Guide them, and you risk breaking what makes them strong. They are not like us. They are not meant to be shaped. They are meant to shape." And so the great question hung over the galaxy like a shadow. What do we do with humanity? Invite them in, and risk everything? Restrain them, and perhaps ignite their defiance? Or leave them alone, and wonder what destiny waits for them in the dark? The Harari's last words lingered long after they departed. The architects stir. They hear the noise of your discovery. And when they wake, they will ask what you have done. Be ready. Captain Vexusa stood once more on the bridge of the star's grace, gazing down at Earth. The blue planet turned slowly beneath her, alive with light and contradiction. She had mapped dead worlds for centuries. She had seen empires crumble into dust. She thought she knew the laws of history, the rules of survival. But now, watching the humans, she felt something strange, something she had not felt since her youth. Hope. And fear. Side by side. Perhaps, she murmured to herself, they are not here to join our story. Perhaps they are here to begin another. The fleet withdrew from Sol in silence, leaving behind only hidden eyes to watch and wait. Humanity would continue upward, unaware that the galaxy trembled at their footsteps. They would argue, divide, rebuild, collapse, and rise again. They would send machines deeper into the dark. They would dream of walking among the stars, never knowing that the stars were already watching. And far beyond, in the forgotten ruins of the architects, something stirred. A whisper. A shift. A shadow opening its eyes. The galaxy had thought humanity would be the end of stability. The Harari had warned they would be the beginning of awakening. And perhaps both were true. Because in humanity's chaos, the galaxy saw its own reflection. And in humanity's resilience, it glimpsed something it had nearly forgotten. The possibility of change. The story of the galaxy was no longer certain. The future was no longer written. And somewhere on a small blue world, oblivious to it all, humanity kept moving forward, fragile, flawed, unstoppable.